Welcome back, Mando.
Ho, ho, ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to our 381st droid diving episode of MandoVision. I am your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Reach out to us on the socials at Mando_Vision on X and Instagram, MandoVision at Blue Sky, and of course you can email the show MandoVisionTom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we are back. And yes, we have found. It's been there. It was on the list. We're just going to knock it out. We're going to do it. We are going to deep dive into my childhood by rewatching the 1985 animated series, Droids. Yes, the further adventures of R2-D2 and C-3PO. And I am excited to go back to this because I haven't watched this show in 40-something years. So it's going to be a trip down memory lane. And I'm really excited to go on that with you guys. We will try not to get too deep on the nostalgia because nostalgia has been weaponized. You may note my voice is a little off today, recovering from a cold that made the recording of this episode dubious. I wasn't sure we'd get to it this week because of the ailment, but hey, we're gonna suit up. We're gonna play through it, and we're gonna get this episode in the books for you guys, the dedicated, supporting, amazing listeners of Buckethead Nation. All right, so a little bit of Star Wars news. First, I came across a report from, I believe it was SpaceCon that was held recently, and one of their guests was Mr. Ian McDiarmid, Chief Palpatine himself, and he brought something new to light that was of interest for many Star Wars fans out there, that once upon a time George Lucas had approached him about a Palpatine television series that would sort of document and chronicle his rise to power. There wasn't a lot of specifics, a lot of details in the show, like what grounds it might cover, like how the sort of things it might get into, but apparently George Lucas had a conversation about this, and I find it interesting because we know George was beginning to, he wanted to dabble in the television milieu, but it was always technology and the cost of things that was prohibitive. You know, the closest we got to a Star Wars television show live action helmed by George Lucas was Star Wars Underworld, which, you know, a lot of elements of that ended up folded into some of the more animated shows and sort of lives on in that sense. But, you know, live action Star Wars until The Mandalorian was sort of out of reach. The idea that he had a Palpatine show that he toyed with is interesting, though ultimately I feel that it's good that it didn't come to light. Why is that? Because Palpatine is the bad guy. Palpatine is irredeemable. Palpatine is, quote-unquote, pure evil, according to some. So how could that work? How could that really be a television show? And I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I am. Well, there's a Maul TV show. Maul's the bad guy. Indeed. And Maul's journey is very, very interesting. But look at what that show is and how it's shaped and how it's structured. Maul is obviously a driving force of the show. But like we're on that journey with the Lawsons. We're on that journey with Devin. Those are our sort of point of contact characters. Palpatine is to me, Palpatine functions best as sort of like this unknowable character. You know, he is just sort of like the ultimate bad guy, the final boss. And by trying to have a television show centered around him, you risk having to explore things about the character that might make him sympathetic, might make us understand why he's trying to do what he's doing. And I don't know if I feel that is the right path for that character. I sort of just like him as the ultimate bad guy. You know, he wants power, he wants to rule, he wants immortality, he wants all these dark negative things. I don't need to know that it comes from a place of a pure heart. I don't. That, to me, that diminishes Palpatine, and it also would affect the relationship that we have seen with Vader over the time, right? Like Vader's journey in Return of the Jedi is far more understandable because of his son and because of a familial connection, and the son holding strong in the belief that the father is redeemable. These are things that I don't think I want to go through with Palpatine. And again, like what direction would you go that isn't repeating what we saw with Vader or other characters in Star Wars? So ultimately, I'm glad it didn't pan out. As interested as I am in exploring Palpatine's backstory, I got a lot of what I needed from the Darth Plagueis novel, whether it's considered canon or not. That story fills in a lot of blanks for me as a Star Wars head. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Would you have wanted to see that show? I also think that, as I've stated before on the show, we live in one period of Star Wars a lot. And I don't think we need every single character who has inhabited that timeline, that time period, to have their own show. Just my 2 bits. That being said, I think it's time we get into our topic of the day, which is the Star Wars animated droid series from 1985. And if there's any young listeners out there, I don't know if you're there or not. I don't know my demographic. My demographic, I suspect, is around my age bracket. But if anyone out there is young and listening to the show, 1985 was the beginnings of the dark times for Star Wars in many, many senses, because after Return of the Jedi came out in 1983, it felt as though Star Wars was kind of done. The comics were still out there from Marvel, but they weren't the same thing they were when the movies were there to support them and prop them up. And it's sort of the same go around. Scratch that last part, but it's sort of the same thing I've brought up in the 90s. Before the Bantam books came around, it was really lean, and Lucas. But at this point, Lucas wanted to keep Star Wars around. Like, he didn't want Star Wars to go away. So people talked to him about, like, well, what if we did like an animated show, like a Saturday morning cartoon? Because once upon a time, Saturday morning cartoons were a really big deal in this country. So he was intrigued by the idea. He'd seen some animation that he was a fan of. I believe it was like a lot of European style art. French comics and things like that he was sort of intrigued by. And so they began to explore the idea of animated shows. Now, granted, people, the higher-ups, whether it's people at ABC or wherever, I'm not entirely sure who he was talking to. Obviously, they wanted the big 3. They wanted Han, Luke, and Leia. And George was like, nah, no, we're not doing that. Like, I'm tabling those characters in case we do a 7, 8, and 9. Let me keep those for me. And so he said, well, we got these Ewoks. Kids love the Ewoks. We're going to do an animated show about the Ewoks. And you know who else is fun? R2-D2 and C-3PO. They're sort of our point of view characters in many senses. They are sort of the characters by which we are introduced, and action and adventure swirls around them. So why not center an animated series around them? And so that was the plan. And a lot of people come on board. The production of the show is expensive, which is ultimately why the show doesn't get a second season, because 1 hour of television for droids and Ewoks was like between $500,000 and $600,000 and for those 2 episodes, for that hour of TV. And that's insane, especially in 1985 money. And again, this was to keep the Star Wars flame, alight at a time when there was nothing coming in the cinemas. So it's an interesting period in Star Wars. But I think George learned a lot from this experience, too, with the animated series, from the Droids cartoon, and what he wanted to do, what he would ultimately end up doing with Star Wars animation down the road. But for George, it was always about the technology and waiting for the technology to catch up to his imagination. So Droids and Ewoks both are sort of like this fun experiment in many, many senses. And I think for a long time, people sort of looked down at the droids in Ewok shows as sort of misguided efforts on George's part. And lumped in, unrightly so, with the holiday special as things best left forgot to the sands of time. I look back on this show, again, a series I've not seen since I was like 6 years old. And now I've only watched the first episode. I haven't gone through the run yet. I'm going through the run with you all. So I thought it was kind of fun. I had a good time with it. Yes, it's very 80s. Yes, it has a very distinctive look. Yes, it stretches the credulity of what we think of as Star Wars. But there's something whimsical and charming about it at the same time. The animation, I think, is really neat. Obviously, it's 2D. It's not the 3D animation that we've grown to love from more recent Star Wars adventures that are animated. But it's again, it sort of has like that French artwork style that was fairly big at the time, that captured George Lucas's imagination. A lot of the character designs are very heavy metal, are very Mad Maxian, and that's okay too. It's a look. I think the biggest thing I have a problem with is like the names of things aren't very good. The names of characters, the names of places, the names of the droids. I'm just sort of like, meh, all right, we could have done better, but all right, it is what it is. And on top of that, to open the show, you have the ultimate in the 80s. You have like a catchy, I guess catchy is debatable, but you have a very 80s style theme song from Stuart Copeland of The Police, In Trouble Again. It's, I mean, a song that lives in the hearts of old heads like myself, I guess. I don't know. It makes me think of Caddyshack when you hear that song. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but it's definitely got those 80 vibes to it. So I think we're going to do what we do and give all props to the people involved. And that means it's time to give props. Sorry. All right, Star Wars Droids, Season 1, Episode 1, The White Witch. Original air date, September 7th, 1985. Directed by Ken Stevenson. Written by Peter Sauer. Excuse me. Also of note for this show is one of the producers on this series, a young Paul Dini, who would eventually go on into the 90s and partner up with a certain animator named Bruce Timm to sort of redefine Batman in the 90s through the Batman the Animated Series. So yeah, young Paul Dini getting some reps in the Star Wars universe on the Droids series. And maybe he even has an episode penned later in the run. Again, I didn't do a deep dive. We'll find that out down the road. Something to get excited about. All right, let's do our primary voice cast for this week. Anthony Daniels is C-3PO. R2-D2 is, of course, himself. Long John Baldry is Vlix. Donnie Burns is a voice. Leslie Donaldson is Kia Mole. Maurice Godlin is Tig Fromm. Let's see, Graham Haley and Dan Hennessy. Graham Haley is also a voice cast member. Don't know what he's credited for. Dan Hennessy is George Doucette. Michael Kirby is also a voice character on the show. Ken Pogue is a voice character on the show. Andrew Sabiston is Thal Jobin. And Tony Tarno does some voice work as well in this episode. Not sure what he does, but he does it. One of the other 80s elements of the series that I do want to mention is it includes a lot of Star Wars sound effects from the films, though not always accurately. Watch that animated opening. One of the first sequences, see some A-Wings flying through or over orbit of the planet Ingo. Yeah, they have the sound effects of the TIE Fighter ion, on the twin ion engines of the TIE Fighter. So, they're trying. I have to give them a little bit of a partial credit. And I do want to mention also the heavy use of synthesizers, because it was the 80s and synthesizers were definitely a thing. All right, let's go ahead. Let's talk about the episode. You know what that means. It's finally time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
All right, let's talk about a little something else first. One little thing to bring up. It wasn't a big deal at the time because it was the 80s and we didn't know a lot of the Star Wars backstory. Remember, we only had episodes 4, 5, and 6. So we knew that when episode 4 starts, that R2 and C-3PO are sort of the property of Captain Antilles. We don't know what that means, but it's stated in the movie, right? There's not a lot of context at the time. Remember, episode 4 just drops us in the middle of the story. We don't know anybody. We don't know anything. We don't know nothing. We know that after the prequels come out, that R2 and 3PO are given directly to Captain Antilles after the events of Revenge of the Sith. So that creates a bit of a paradox. Now, I assume that Droids is considered Legends and doesn't count. But if you wanted to squeeze this in to the continuity, you could. All you have to do is think that at some point, Captain Antilles lost R2 and C-3PO, and then at some point, they are reunited before the events of Episode 4. So you could allow these adventures to exist in your mind continuity if you wanted to. Up to you to decide. As this episode starts, we find out they are the property of a smuggler. The smuggler is unnamed in the episode, though in 2004 in a Polyhedron magazine article, short story, issue 170 if you're looking, that smuggler gets a name, Zevel Hortine. There you go. So this smuggler, who is unseen, is detained by the authorities above Ingo, drops his whatever he's smuggling, and that includes R2 and C-3PO. I assume they must have been in some sort of escape pod again, or because, I mean, again, it's a Saturday morning cartoon. I can't overthink it. But, you know, I imagine these droids would have burned up entering the atmosphere of Ingo. So we'll pretend they were protected by something like a escape pod. We'll see. I don't know. They don't go into it. But we find C-3PO on the acid salt flats of the planet Ingo, looking for R2. They eventually reunite, and it's time to go to a settlement. It's just like Episode 4. Eventually, as they wander, they come across some land speeders. These land speeders are piloted by Thal Jobin and Jord Dusat. And those dudes need an astro droid. They're really excited to see an astromech droid. They're mechanics, but they have higher aspirations to be land speeder racers. I think that's the term they use in this. You know, there's no pod racers. There's no swoops. There's no, you know, a lot of the terms that we know now don't exist yet. So land speeder racers seems to be what they go with. And they have a ship that they've been working on called the White Witch. So if you were expecting something cool, like a person with white witchy powers, good luck. That's not what you got. You got a new speeder, a white speeder that goes real fast that R2 can now pilot as the astro droid for it. So they're out in the salt flats. They're racing around. They're doing their stuff, but not in the White Witch. They're in their other things, working on their skills, I guess. I don't know. That's when they come across R2. That's when they come across C-3PO. And on the way back to their little mechanics garage, they cross over into the Forbidden Zone. And there's somebody monitoring the Forbidden Zone, a guy named Tig From the From gang. He's doing something out there. We don't know what. They talk about something called a Trigon. We don't know what that is. And he's not real happy that these two grease monkeys have stumbled into his not seen lair because it's all beneath the surface. But he doesn't want them there poking around. So he dispatches some droids to take care of him. He trusts droids. He doesn't trust people. Which his little cohort, Flix, thinks is silly, but that's what they do. Again, we don't get a lot of context about the From gang in this episode, so don't look too deep on it. We know that Tig is the son of the head of the From gang, and that he's trying to do something on his own here. He's trying to consolidate power. He's looking to take out some of the other gangs with this Trigon situation. And he's upset that Thal and Jord have sort of crossed into his territory, even though they haven't discovered anything, even though they don't know anything. But he starts this by sticking his droids on them. And it doesn't go great. Like C-3PO engages in combat with a tower droid. He thinks he beats it up by throwing a rock at it. He actually gets an assist from ship pilot Kia Mal, who is out there in the desert. Her ship needs some repairs, so she's looking to hire these guys, but she, wanted to observe them first. It's a little strange, but I guess it all works. But she doesn't really reveal herself yet. She sort of sticks to the shadows a little bit longer. So after this encounter with the droids, Thal and Jord take R2 and 3PO back to the garage. That's where they show them the White Witch. Talk about, getting out of there, going to the Bunta race. Bunta. Yes, another thing that'll come into play in the prequels when they finally come out, over a decade later. So Pay attention to those little things like that. There's little Easter eggs throughout this series that will show up down the road in other Star Wars things. So that's of interesting little note. So Tig's really upset that these guys got away. He's going to send some droids after them. He can't risk the other gangs finding out about the Trigon and what he's doing out there and underneath the surface of the desert where they didn't even know he was doing anything. So Thal takes R2 and C-3PO. They're going to go into town, look for some parts, blah, blah, blah. Jord gets taken by muscle droids. So far, throughout this series, the droids have the clever names of what they are. The tower droid is a tower droid because it's tall, like a tower. The muscle droids are muscle droids because they're like the muscle. They're like the hired thugs. It's not a lot of creativity on that front just yet, but that's okay. So Jord gets taken. Thal and R2 are trying to come up with the plan, and that's when Kia Mall shows up, introduces herself, and reveals her skunk hair, which is super weird and unique, but plays into like that Mad Max thing I was talking about. Looks like she's straight out of the Road Warrior. But hey, that's cool. So does Thal's haircut. So it's all working. It's all working. We're maintaining a consistent visual continuity. These guys decide that they're going to go get their friend back. And that means infiltrating the From Gang's base. Now, George's down there, and he's just trying to be a friendly guy. He thinks he can talk his way out of this. But he keeps guessing what Tig From is doing. And Vlix is there, kind of being the cynical guy that he is. Anyways, this is when the trouble again begins, because R2 and C-3PO are in trouble again. Hijinks, antics, they all ensue down in the base. We got speeders running around. We're blowing up droids. We got C-3PO impersonating security forces. And it all goes bad for Tig From. I can't even get into all the different shenanigans. I mean, there's a lot of like little things in here that are very video gamey. As Thal is flying the White Witch, and the doors are opening and closing around him, and these little teeth mashy things are happening. But our friends are going to be reunited, and they get out of there. They basically wreck Tig's base underground. But no one knows about the Trigon just yet. No. That secret's still safe. But he can't let that go. He's not going to let that go. So one of the things I forgot about this series is that it's actually like sort of like arcs. There's actual story arcs. Like, we're going to follow these characters for a little bit here. I had forgotten that completely. So our heroes take off in Kia's repaired ship. Thanks, guys. They kind of do that pretty quickly. Well, it looks like they're working on it as they are escaping from Ingo. They got the White Witch. They're going to head to the Bunta race. They're going to do these things. Everyone's in tow. Everyone's happy, except for the From gang. So what are they going to get up to next? I don't know. But our heroes think they're safe. They don't think there's going to be any retribution. Except there's going to be retribution. The From gang is not going to let this go. But that is basically the first episode of our show. The first episode of Droids. And I'll be honest with you. I thought it was fun. I thought it was whimsical and fun. Probably a little generous. But I'm going to give it 7 buckets. It is what it is. It's probably more a 6, but I'm going to give it 7 because I liked it more than I thought I would. And I actually remembered a decent amount of it. Now, one thing in this episode, we didn't talk too much about it because I don't think they dive too deeply into this throughout the course of this arc. But Thal just happens to have a lightsaber. I think he has a sort of a throwaway line that, it was left there. This guy came in, he just kind of like left it here. We were doing some stuff and he left it here. And now I got a lightsaber because it's Star Wars. And I guess you have to have a lightsaber now and then. And they just sort of use it as a tool. It's never, I haven't seen it used as a weapon yet in the show. No. Do they use it to cut some droids up? Now I can't remember. But they don't use it with the sort of precision a Jedi would. But it's just a lightsaber. So that's just kind of randomly in the show. A little side note for you. Yeah, when you're like, hey, wait, that guy's got a lightsaber. Don't worry. I don't think they go too deep on it. But maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe. Because if we're on this journey together, friends, 7 buckets feels generous. But yeah, it's probably like 6.5. Let's be perfectly honest. I'm sugarcoating my nostalgia a little bit. Like I said, I was going to try not to, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes you can't avoid it. And with that being said, let's get the heck out of here. We already spent 25 minutes on this. That's silly. I imagine the rest of these episodes, as we cover the show, will be a lot faster. I guess it just depends on what Star Wars news is going on that week. All right, so go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding, patient, tolerant, and awesome. And tell a friend about Droids and how you're going to rewatch it on Disney Plus. The entire run is on the Disney Plus. Pardon me. So go check it out with me, and let's go on this journey together. We'll be back probably next week, maybe sooner. We'll see how it goes. And we're talking more droids. All right, Bucketheads. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.